Let's recap that again. WordPress is a method of constantly communicating between the web browser and the web server. It's called the heartbeat, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi everyone, and welcome to the WPQuickies series, WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. I am Will Brown, WordPress consultant and educator. I help WordPress designers and developers grow their business. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. Do hit that subscribe button on YouTube and ding that bell if you want some video notifications. Also, if you're on Facebook, give me a good thumbs up. That'd be fantastic. While you're on Facebook, you can join our Facebook group, which is WordPress Sydney Meetup. I post a lot of WordPress stuff on there, and you can continue the conversation, ask me questions on there as well. And also visit WPAustralia.org. That's got a list of all the WordPress meetups in Australia, and it's also got a link to our Slack channel, which is real-time communication with us. Okay, the next in-person monthly meeting, WordPress Sydney Meetup, is on the last Monday of every month at 6 p.m. at the Microsoft Reactor, which is right next to Wynyard Station. And I'm going to talk about creating a content strategy. So we're thinking about 2023 and what we're going to do and all the stuff we're going to do for 2023. So I'm going to take you through what it means to create a content strategy and a little bit of a workshop on some topics that you can come up with for the next year. So join me, that's on November the 28th, next Monday. Let's talk about the WordPress heartbeat then. It's alive. WordPress has a heartbeat. But don't worry, there's no Terminators chasing after you just yet. In 2013, WordPress 3.6 was bundled with an API called the WordPress heartbeat. Now, what is the WordPress heartbeat? Well, the Heartbeat API is an API, an application programming interface. It allows the client browser to communicate directly with the server that WordPress is running on. Now, data can be sent to and received from the server. It's a background process, and it's all done within the client's web browser. So there's not a lot of server load for the actual API itself. Now, when WordPress web page loads, the client-side heartbeat code sets up an interval, and that's called a tick, and it runs every approximately 20 seconds for those. Now, when the tick runs, the heartbeat gathers data via JavaScript and jQuery event, and then sends this to the server, and then it listens for a response. On the server, the admin AJAX handler that takes the past data, it prepares a response, it filters the response if it's need be, and then it returns a JSON format data back to the web browser. So this is kind of real-time communication between the client, the web browser client, and the server. Okay, so what is it used for? The WordPress core uses heartbeat ticks for autosaving draft posts. So you'll notice that when you're typing along, every so often you'll get a little autosave up in the top right-hand corner. So it uses the heartbeat for that. It uses it for post locking, and there's an example on the screen just now. So ever since 3.6, whenever it was, every time if you've got multiple people in the back-end dashboard, if someone goes to edit something someone's already editing, you get this little notification there, so you get a chance to take it over, or just go back and ask the person to come out of it. So post-locking, that's supported by the heartbeat, and also admin dashboard notices as well. Some of the dashboard notices, if something happens in kind of real time, it'll post a notification up there for you. So that's kind of three things that the WordPress heartbeat uses. WooCommerce also use it as well for things like cart notifications, sales as well, if something's went on sale, for example, just then, and it might you talk to the web browser and refresh some of the prices and some of the icons and things. So it is used, not extensively, but it certainly is used by some applications. Okay, so issues with the WordPress heartbeat. Now, it's running in the client. Most of it's running in the client, so it's a client service that talks to the web server. But because the Heartbeat API sends these pulses of data between the web browser and the server every kind of 15-20 seconds, it can increase the server's end workload. Now, the client is doing a lot of the job. It's doing like the pulse management, it's creating the tick, it's sending the initial response, and it's listening. But the frequency of the intervals, the tick interval every 15 seconds, depending on how much you're asking of the server to do, that can really increase the server's workload. Now, when the heartbeat tick is received, the server has to check for and run any associated callback functions. And this requires a PHP thread on the server to run pretty much constantly, or at least every 15 seconds. And that can cause high CPU usage, especially if there's lots of stuff hooked in to that heartbeat tick and the server's having to run through, do database queries and stuff. That could really increase the server load for that. Now, suppose that you are on a cheap shared hosting. In that case, the constant PHP running can eat up your overall performance and resource usage. And it can also spike your CPU, as I said. And that could result in a really slow web server, or worse, you could get this notification, or actually your visitors could get this notification. It's an error 508, and that means the resource limit has been reached. Now, most web packages, and most shared or cheap ones, web hosting packages, they're kind of, think of it like a box. So it's a container, and you only get so many resources inside the box. And once that's all eaten up, then you basically can't go anywhere else until you have to wait until maybe a next hour for more resources to be allocated. And this is the problem with running, really kind of cheap web hosting, is that if you use up all the resources all at once, well, your visitors get this type of error, which is resource limit is reached. And there's nothing much you can do except go back to your web host and plead to them to give you more resources, or just wait for that next hour, or even worse, the next day, for the resources to be available again. Now, many really, really cheap, like ultra cheap shared hosting plans, they actually disable the WordPress Heartbeat API. So if you find that post locking or autosave isn't working, then you might want to check with the hosting provider to see if the Heartbeat is enabled. You can also, I think it's in the site tools as well, the health tools, you can check to see if the Heartbeat is working as well. Okay, those are some issues. So how to disable the heartbeats. So if there, for any reason that you really want to disable that, so you don't want it on, maybe you are on one of these cheap hosts and you want to make sure that it's not using up all your resources. For whatever reason, if you decide that you want to disable the heartbeat completely, there's a little bit of code that you can drop into your themes functions.php file. Here it's just a single function with an action. So we're giving it a name, WP stop heartbeat. And then there's a WP_d register_script, and the script name is heartbeat. And then we add it to the init action for that. And what's that doing? It's basically saying that the script that's running the heartbeat API, we want to deregister or not load it, basically. So if you drop that into your functions.php file, then that means the heartbeat will be disabled completely. However, rather than a kind of all or nothing approach, some plugins help you to fine control the Heartbeat API. And this is one of them. I'll just hide myself there so you've got the full URL there. So this is called Heartbeat Control. Now this plugin, and it's by the caching company WP Rocket. So it's a well-established company. It allows you to change the default Heartbeat API settings. Now, the plugin hasn't been updated for over a year, so you're probably going to get warned about downloading an outdated plugin. But in this particular instance, that is okay, as the plugin only really does one specific thing. It just controls the heartbeat. It changes the frequency of the heartbeat ticks. So even though WP Rocket haven't updated it in over a year, which they really, really should, in this instance, it's doing such a laser-focused thing that's unlikely to have any issues or critical faults or anything like that. But just put it out there, you'll probably get a warning, that it's incompatible with your version or it's out of date. But it's fine. It's okay to use if you want to use it. So let's have a look. So once it's installed and activated, you can navigate to the settings. So it's from the dashboard, settings and heartbeat control. And you can view the plugin screen, which is here. I'll just get rid of myself. In the first screen, you can completely disable the Heartbeat API. So if you don't want to muck around with code, if you don't really understand what the code is, if you don't want to play around with your functions.php file, then you can use this plugin. So you can completely disable it on the WordPress dashboard. You can disable it on the front end and or the post editor as well. So you've got three options there. From the dashboard and the back end, on the front end, you can disable it, and when you're editing posts as well. Someone's asking, is this related to WP Health? No, it's not. This is separate. So Heartbeat came in first. For those, I think on the WordPress Health, there might be a check to see if Heartbeat is running. There might not be. I'm not 100% sure. But no, this is not related to the WP Health. It is a separate API, separate service. Great question. Okay, the next one here. If you want to do fine control, so that one was just, allow, disable or modify. So you click on the modify, that allows you to change the frequency of the ticks, and these are in seconds. So when you open up, it'll probably stick it to the 15, which is the default one for WordPress for that. And the maximum length you can set it to in this particular plugin is 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. And that's a pretty long time for that. You can ignore the more optimization and About Us screens at the top. That's just advertisement for WP Rocket Premium Cache and other plugins. So this heartbeat control's only really got the one setting to control the dashboard, the front end, and the post editor. So you can disable, activate, or have fine control over the particular optimization. So that might quite be useful if you are on like a cheap hosting plan. You've got like resources. You might want to up the frequency a little bit just to see if you still want that post locking and autosave features. Then you maybe just increase the frequency and see if that sits well with your CPU and resource usage. And remember, always to save the changes to the admin screen and refresh as well. So these controls here, they set the frequency, but you've got to do a refresh once that's done for those numbers to pick up, and on the front end, the back end, and the post editor as well. Now, if you are a developer and you need control over the heartbeat ticks programmatically, I'll just hide myself there so you can see the full code. You can use the heartbeat_settings filter, which accepts a single setting, which is the input parameter array. There's a reference down there. All these links I'll put on the Facebook page, the meetup page, underneath the videos as well at the end of this broadcast. And now you can change things like the nonce and the admin Ajax URL, but the only setting you're likely to change is the interval array. So you can see that that's the second or the first line in the function. So we've got a function which is set heartbeat time interval. Then we've got one line that says the setting, which is the array, and the interval part of the array, and we're setting that to 60. So remember the WordPress core sets the heartbeat tick to 15 seconds. And in this bit of code, we're setting it to 60 seconds, which is 1 minute, and then return that setting back. And then underneath, we're just adding that filter. So I'm basically saying the heartbeat settings, we want to run this function, and that function changes the heartbeat tick. Now you can add this code to your theme's functions.php file or use the code snippet plugin. So if you don't know what the code snippet plugin is, I've covered that before a few WP quickies back. Really cool plugin. Allows you to add code so you don't have to tamper around with functions.php file or any other theme files. So have a look at that. If you need to monitor the WordPress heartbeat ticks as Ajax requests, so if you want to see what's happening in the dashboard, what's happening in the front end, what's happening in the post editor, you can use the inspect element tool in your web browser. It's supported by all the top browsers, so it could be called something other than inspect. It could be inspector or whatever else. But basically, you right-hand click anywhere in this is the dashboard, for example. So I've right-hand clicked on the dashboard, and right at the very bottom, this is Chrome. On Windows, I've got a little inspect. So I click on that, and it opens up on the right-hand side of the browser. So this is your inspector window up here. What you want to do with, you want to wait for a few seconds, but you want to go up to the networks tab. So that's the one that the arrow is pointing to, and wait for 20, 30 seconds or something for the next admin-ajax.php heartbeat tick to run. And we can see here there is one there. So we've got admin-ajax.php, that's the second red arrow. And we can see the status is 200, which is good for HTTP. And if we click on it, so if you click on that admin-ajax.php where the arrow is pointing to, it will open up this little window here. This one allows you to view the headers and the payload as well. Now, the headers is what HTTP sends. So an HTTP request always sends headers. And here we can see there's a request URL right at the very top underneath the general. So it's going to my website, willbrown.com, into the admin folder, and it's running admin-ajax.php. No surprise there. It's a post request. It's got a good status of 200. That's good. And then a remote address, which is the IP address that I have been pinging from, which I have masked there. And then some of the other response errors that we get as well. But you're probably more interested in the next screen, which is this one, which is the payload. I've made that a little bit bigger just so you can see. So here's the payload. Payload is the data that's being sent between the browser and the server. So it's just another fancy word for the data that's being sent between them. The data here includes the interval, includes the WordPress nonce, the action, which is heartbeat, the screen ID, which is dashboard, and a focus, which I'm not really sure about what that is. But we can see here, this is after I've pasted that little bit of code into my function.php file. So I've changed the WordPress core heartbeat tick interval from 15 seconds to 60, and we can see that that is reflected here. So if we have a look at we've clicked on the admin-ajax.php under the name, and had a look at the header. Now we're looking at the payload. This is the data that's being sent with the tick, and we can see that interval is now set to 60 for that. So it's kind of an easy way for you to have a look and see exactly what's going on, what data is being sent to and from. That will probably change. If you've got a WooCommerce website, you'll probably see maybe some pricing data, maybe some sale data, maybe some cart data as well being sent with the tick for that. So you can certainly monitor what's happening with your admin Ajax. And that's just general. So if you've got stuff that's happening in the background, you can just always come in here, go into the network tab and have a look and see what's happening, what's ticking over in the background of your WordPress website, regardless whether or not it's the heartbeat tick. It could be something else. For example, WooCommerce, or it could be LearnDash or some other big plugins that's running background tasks. You can always come here and see exactly what it's sending to and from the client browser. Okay. So I find the Heartbeat API quite useful. I really probably couldn't do without post revisions, and definitely not post locking. A lot of my clients that I work with, they have multiple editors in there. So post locking is really, really important for them. For that, and we can do things as well. We can actually piggyback onto the post locking and write that out to the database, and just see exactly how many people, are editing stuff, and get frequencies and data collection from that. So we can use the Heartbeat for data collection and other things like that. But if you're on a good hosting plan, you're probably not going to see any notable issues regarding server resources. But if you're on one of these ultra cheap WordPress hosting plans, then you might want to have a look at that plugin. Just increase the frequency a little bit, if you're seeing your resources or your CP spike a lot for no reason. And again, come back into here and have a look at, the payloads, and what it's doing, and that'll give you a little bit of idea of what the WordPress is doing in the background as well. Any questions, you can drop it in the comments or follow up in the Facebook group as well. So that's WordPress Sydney Meetup on Facebook. Just drop me a note in there, and I'll try my very best to answer that. But that's the WordPress Heartbeat API. It's not a hugely massive thing. It's only got a couple of API requests and a filter for those, but it's useful to be able for the web client to talk to the server, get response, and then update stuff on the screen without having to do a page refresh, essentially. Here I am. That's me. So you can connect with me on willbrown.com, on LinkedIn as well, willbrownau, on Instagram, willbrown_au, and on Twitter, willbrown_au as well. I can't see any questions coming through. That's fantastic. No worries about that. So next month, I am going to be talking about displaying related posts. So what are related posts? Why should you have them? And some choices for how you can display related posts on your WordPress blog. Okay, thank you very much for joining me today. Take care and see you next week. Bye.